Shiny new panels. Each one's a miniature power station, Maya, Leo announced, gesturing towards the sleek, obsidian rectangles now dominating their roof. The installation, barely a day old, filled him with a surge of accomplishment with every glance. He felt as if his home had been imbued with a special power. Maya, ever practical, regarded the panels with a quizzical tilt of her head, brow furrowed in thought. But do they truly work? I always heard solar was overpriced and ineffective. Not these. Leo countered, chest swelling with pride. Dad researched this extensively. Cutting-edge technology. Incredibly efficient, and they even stockpile surplus energy in the garage batteries. We can practically run the entire house, maybe even bolster the neighborhood security grid on pure sunshine. He lowered his voice, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Imagine, Maya, complementary energy for all. A giggle escaped Maya's lips. Hold your horses, Captain Planet. But seriously, free energy would be amazing. My folks perpetually gripe about the electric bill. Across the immaculately kept lawn of number 14, Agnes Crabtree's gaze sharpened. She clutched her pruning shears, the chilled steel biting into her palm. Those things. The slick ebony intrusions marring the Maxwell's roofline. Sunlight bounced off their surface, momentarily blinding her. Shielding her vision with a gloved hand, a deep furrow etched itself into her face. The unusual landscaping was already offensive. Now this. She couldn't quite articulate the source of her irritation. It transcended mere aesthetics. It was the sheer gall of it all. The audacity to alter things. To disrupt the established paradigm. Agnes snipped a withered bloom from a rosebush with a crisp, decisive click. The sound resonated in the otherwise tranquil afternoon. She resolved to contact the HOA office first thing in the morning. Surely there were regulations? There had to be stipulations concerning rooftop modifications. Back at the Maxwell residence, Leo's father, David, emerged from the garage, a broad smile illuminating his features. All right, crew. Official update, these solar panels are pulling their weight. We've already amassed enough juice to power the house for a full day and are even feeding excess energy back into the grid. Leo's mother, Sarah, appeared, wiping her hands on her checkered apron. I told you it was a sound investment, David. And think of the ecological benefits. We're shrinking our carbon footprint. And padding our wallets, David chimed in, winking at Leo. Which translates to more comic books. Leo's face broke into a wide grin. Awesome. He gazed upward at the panels, a wave of pride washing over him. He had championed the solar project, fueled by his climate change awareness studies at school. He felt empowered, like he was actively affecting change. Agnes Crabtree observed them from her verdant domain, her expression a study in inscrutability. She watched their faces light up as they exchanged warm laughter. She saw the panels gleaming under the sun's rays, a symbol of their unconventional way of life. An existence she neither understood nor coveted. Agnes severed another spent blossom, this time with added fervor and undercurrent of force. Regulations were needed. Order must be restored. The resolve solidified in her mind like granite. Later that evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of lavender and rose, Agnes sat at her kitchen table, a mountain of HOA documents arrayed before her. She meticulously scrutinized the fine print, mouthing the words under her breath. Covenant after covenant, rule after rule. A sense of grim satisfaction welled within her as she navigated the intricate web of restrictions. Then she struck gold. Section 3. 2. Subsection B. All external modifications, additions, or enhancements to any property within the Meadow Creek Estates Homeowners Association precinct must be presented to the Architectural Review Committee for sanctioning before the commencement of work. A slow, knowing smile crept across Agnes's face. Eureka! A rule is a rule. Agnes Crabtree stood on the Maxwell's porch, a brick of a woman in a floral dress that seemed perpetually starched. She clutched a thick, burgundy book to her chest like a shield. The setting sun glinted off her severe spectacles. Good afternoon, Agnes, Mrs. Maxwell said, her voice carefully neutral as she opened the screen door. Leo hovered behind her, peeking through the gap. Good afternoon, Mrs. Maxwell, Agnes replied, her voice tight. I'm here regarding the situation. She gestured vaguely towards the roof with a disapproving sniff. Mr. Maxwell joined his wife at the door, his brow furrowed. The solar panels? We thought they were quite tastefully done. Agnes's lips thinned. Taste has nothing to do with it, Mr. Maxwell. This is a matter of compliance. Rule 3.14, subsection D, paragraph 7 clearly states, no external structures or alterations to roofing are permitted without prior written consent from the Homeowners Association Architectural Review Committee. And I can assure you, no such consent was given. She thrust the burgundy book forward. Here, read it for yourselves. Mrs. Maxwell took the book with a sigh. The scent of old paper and dust wafted up. Leo craned his neck to see the offending rule. It looked as boring as his history textbook. Agnes, surely there's some flexibility here, Mr. Maxwell said, running a hand through his thinning hair. These panels are environmentally friendly. They're helping to reduce our carbon footprint. Agnes remained unmoved. Environmentalism is all well and good, Mr. Maxwell, but a rule is a rule. If we start making exceptions, where does it end? Soon, everyone will be installing monstrosities. We have to maintain the aesthetic integrity of the neighborhood. She shuddered dramatically. But they're practically invisible from the street, Mrs. Maxwell protested, flipping through the rulebook. And they're silent. They don't bother anyone. That's not the point, is it? Agnes retorted, her voice rising. The point is, you did not follow procedure. You acted unilaterally. You flaunted the authority of the HOA. Leo shifted nervously behind his mother. He knew Agnes Crabtree had a reputation for being particular, but he hadn't realized how much power she wielded, or how much she enjoyed wielding it. He caught his dad's eye. Mr. Maxwell was making a stay calm face. Agnes, we're happy to submit an application retroactively, Mr. Maxwell offered, trying to placate her. We can provide all the necessary documentation. Agnes shook her head, her jowls wobbling. It's too late for that, Mr. Maxwell. The panels are already installed. The damage is done. The HOA has already convened and a preliminary decision has been made. You have 30 days to remove the panels and restore the roof to its original condition. 30 days? Mrs. Maxwell's voice was barely a whisper. Leo saw her shoulders slump. He felt a surge of anger. It wasn't fair. They were trying to do something good and this HOA rule was standing in their way. Or, Agnes continued, her voice softening slightly, you could explore alternatives. Perhaps panels that are less conspicuous. Or a different location. The HOA is willing to consider reasonable compromises. Mr. Maxwell pinched the bridge of his nose. We'll look into it, Agnes. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. See that you do, Agnes said, her eyes narrowing. And don't think you can just ignore this. The HOA has ways of enforcing its rules. Fines, legal action. We wouldn't want it to come to that, would we? She turned and marched back down the porch steps. The burgundy book still clutched tightly in her hand. The click of her sensible shoes echoed in the suddenly quiet evening. Leo watched her go, his jaw clenched. He knew, with a certainty that settled like a stone in his stomach, that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The green inning, the familiar squeak of his bike tires announced Leo's arrival home. He usually enjoyed the afternoon sun warming his face as he coasted down the street, but today a knot of unease tightened in his stomach. Mrs. Crabtree's car was parked in front of his house. That wasn't unusual. She was always sniffing around, looking for violations, but something felt different. He dropped his bike on the lawn, he'd risk a lecture about property value erosion later, and walked towards the driveway. That's when he saw her. Agnes Crabtree, resplendent in a floral dress and a grim expression, stood on a ladder, a roller brush dripping with a sickly green paint. She was painting the solar panels. Mrs. Crabtree, what are you doing? Leo yelled, his voice cracking with disbelief. Agnes didn't even flinch. She just kept rolling the green paint across the sleek, dark surface of the panels. The stuff looked cheap, the kind that peeled after the first rain. He ran closer. Stop. You can't do that. She finally paused, looking down at him with a withering glare. These monstrosities are an eyesore, Leo. The HOA has received numerous complaints. They violate the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. But they're solar panels. They're helping the environment. Leo sputtered, gesturing wildly. He tried explaining this to her before, the whole neighborhood emergency backup system thing. But it seemed to bounce right off her. Nonsense. They're reflecting sunlight into my prize-winning petunias, causing them to wilt. And they're industrial looking. She resumed painting with renewed vigor, the green spreading like a malignant moss. But the security system. The cameras. If the power goes out. Leo tried to reason, but she cut him off. The security system is the responsibility of the HOA, young man, and we will ensure it functions properly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a schedule to keep. She dipped the roller back into the paint bucket, the sloshing sound grating on Leo's nerves. He pleaded, he argued. He even tried to tug the ladder, but Agnes Crabtree stood her ground. a green-stained Valkyrie defending the sanctity of suburban conformity. It was like talking to a brick wall painted, well, green. Finally, defeated, Leo stepped back, watching in horror as she completed her work. The panels, once shimmering black rectangles of technological promise, were now coated in a thick layer of the awful, cloying green. It looked like someone had vomited pea soup all over his roof. Agnes Crabtree, satisfied with her handiwork, climbed down the ladder with a triumphant sniff. There. Much better. Now run along, Leo. Homework awaits. She gathered her supplies, a smug look plastered on her face, and waddled back to her car. Leo waited until she drove away before rushing to the side of the house. He grabbed a garden hose and sprayed the panels, hoping the water pressure would wash away the paint. It didn't. The green goo just smeared, making the situation even worse. He ran inside, grabbed a rag, and climbed onto the roof, ignoring the ache in his muscles. He scrubbed and scrubbed, but the paint was stubborn, clinging to the surface like a bad idea. After an hour of futile effort, he gave up, his hands raw and his heart heavy. He pulled out his phone and checked the panel's output. 0. Nothing. The green paint had effectively killed them. He swiped to the security system interface. All cameras offline. Battery reserve critically low. He stared at the screen, the implications sinking in. Agnes Crabtree hadn't just violated some aesthetic code, she'd crippled the entire neighborhood's emergency power source and blinded their security system. And all because of some wilting petunias. He felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. This wasn't just about his family anymore. This was about everyone. Lights out. The microwave clock blinked erratically, the numbers blurring in a digital dance of confusion. Leo was mid-sentence, recounting his near-disastrous attempt to build a birdhouse when the lights flickered, casting dancing shadows on the kitchen walls. A low hum, usually a constant, almost unnoticed presence, vanished. Then darkness. Whoa, Leo breathed, more impressed than alarmed. Did you see that? His dad, mid-bite into a sandwich, lowered it slowly. He chewed thoughtfully for a moment, then swallowed. Looks like we blew a fuse. Leo scrambled for his phone, activating the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating dust motes swirling in the sudden stillness. He loved moments like these, unexpected disruptions to the mundane. I'll check the breaker box, he offered, already halfway to the hallway. Hold on, his dad said, his voice a low rumble. He went to the front window and peered out. It's not just us. The whole neighborhood's dark. Leo joined him, shining the flashlight out into the street. Houses stood like silent, black monoliths against the inky sky. No porch lights, no glowing windows, nothing. Wow, Leo said, a grin spreading across his face. Total blackout. His dad, however, didn't seem to share his enthusiasm. He let out a sigh. Great, just what we needed. He rummaged in a drawer and produced a boxy, old-fashioned flashlight. Okay, let's find some candles and check the weather. I hope this isn't going to last long. As they moved through the house, the silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the scrape of their shoes on the hardwood floor. Even the refrigerator had fallen silent, its gentle hum replaced by an ominous stillness. Think it's Karen's fault? Leo asked, only half joking. His dad chuckled humorlessly. I doubt even she has the power to knock out the entire grid. They found a stash of candles in the dining room and began placing them around the house, their flickering flames pushing back the darkness. The air filled with the faint, comforting scent of vanilla. I'm going to check the security system, his dad announced, heading toward the living room. Leo followed, curious. What about it? His dad stopped in front of the wall-mounted control panel, its screen now blank. He pressed a few buttons, but nothing happened. The power outage knocked it offline, he said, his voice tight. No backup battery, apparently. So, no cameras? Leo asked, his brow furrowing. He thought of the solar panels, still gleaming brightly atop their roof, rendered useless in the dark. None, his dad confirmed grimly. He pulled out his phone and tried to access the security app, but the screen remained stubbornly blank. The whole system's down. A prickle of unease ran down Leo's spine. He knew the security system was more than just a deterrent, it was their eyes and ears, especially at night. With it disabled, they were vulnerable. He glanced out the window, the darkness outside now seeming less mysterious and more menacing. Maybe it's just a temporary glitch, Leo said, trying to sound optimistic, though a knot was forming in his stomach. They'll get it back up soon. His dad didn't reply, his gaze fixed on the darkened street outside. The only sounds were the chirping of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. It was a peaceful scene, yet Leo couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, terribly wrong. The silence felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken anxieties. He had a sudden, irrational urge to check the solar panels to make sure they were still there, still stubbornly reflecting the moonlight. The secret connection. The air inside the shed was stagnant, a cloying mix of fertilizer dust and the ghosts of tools long unused. Leo choked back a cough, fanning the heavy atmosphere. He sought anything, some clue to decipher Agnes Crabtree's descent into artistic vandalism. His fingers traced the outline of a dusty shelf, upsetting a tarnished trowel. Impatience nipped at him. He was on the verge of admitting defeat when a metallic twinkle snagged his attention. Obscured behind a jumble of terracotta, practically invisible, sat a small, dented toolbox. His father's. The hinges screeched a rusty protest as Leo retrieved it. Inside, nestled amongst the familiar clutter of screwdrivers and pliers, was a multimeter, a constant companion to his dad's tinkering. A poignant memory surfaced, quickly eclipsed by a more pressing thought. Solar panels. Emergency power. Fragments of conversation flickered in his mind like faded home movies. His father explaining the panels weren't mere decoration, but connected to a central hub, a failsafe to keep essential services online during outages. Security lights, gate mechanisms, even the neighborhood watch cameras. "You thought of everything, Dad?" Leo murmured, the pieces settling into place with a disturbing click. Agnes Crabtree hadn't simply vandalized, she'd sabotaged the entire neighborhood's defenses. A knot formed in his stomach. He envisioned Mrs. Henderson, her slight figure illuminated by the porch light, placing her trust in a now useless security system. He pictured Mr. Garcia burning the midnight oil at his bakery, relying on those cameras to keep watch. All of them exposed because of one woman's. What drove her? Malice? An aesthetic obsession gone mad? A surge of resolve coursed through him. He had to remedy this. He needed to get the panels operational before something happened. He snatched the multimeter, its cool weight grounding him. He knew enough about basic circuitry to assess the damage, to see if the panels still held any life beneath that smothering coat of paint. He had to understand the extent of the damage. Stepping back into the afternoon, the sun felt oppressive, almost accusatory. He shot a glance toward Agnes Crabtree's residence. The aggressively white paint mocked him from afar. He tightened his jaw. This wasn't just about evening the score, it was about shielding his community. He strode toward the panels, the gravel crunching beneath his sneakers. He had a plan, a long shot, but the only one he could see. He would need to be swift before Agnes Crabtree discovered him, before the neighborhood grasped the danger they were in. He placed the toolbox on the ground and extracted the multimeter. The first test was elementary, voltage output. He pressed the probes to the terminals, holding his breath. The needle quivered, then stilled. Nothing. He moved to the next panel and then the next. All lifeless. The paint had erected an impenetrable barrier, suffocating their energy. A wave of helplessness threatened to pull him under, but he fought it back. He wouldn't concede. He couldn't. He had to find a way to remove the paint rapidly and silently. He needed a solvent, something potent enough to eat through the acrylic, but mild enough to leave the panels unscathed. The shed. He recalled his father using a citrus-based cleaner to dissolve tree sap from the car. Gentle, yet effective. Worth a try. He dashed back to the shed, his pulse quickening. He pawed through the cleaning supplies, his fingers flitting over bottles and cans. There. A bulky spray bottle proclaiming citrus power. He seized it, a jolt of optimism energizing him. He raced back to the panels, the bottle gripped firmly in his hand. He sprayed a test area, paused, then wiped it with a rag. The paint yielded, softening slightly. It was working. But it was going to be a slog. A long, arduous slog. And time was his enemy. He could feel it, a sense of urgency constricting him. He peered towards Agnes Crabtree's house. The blinds were drawn tight. Was she observing him? He dismissed the notion and zeroed in on the task. Spray, wipe, repeat. The citrus aroma permeated the air, a bittersweet fragrance that felt almost insulting in the face of his frantic effort. He had to persevere. He had to restore the power. The safety of the neighborhood hinged on it. Operation Cleanup. "Maya, you will not believe this," Leo breathed, tugging her behind the oak at the edge of his property. A furtive glance towards the house, then across the street at Agnes Crabtree, obsessively tending her roses. She vandalized them. Agnes Crabtree painted the solar panels. Maya's jaw dropped. Painted them? But why? She called them an eyesore. Those panels power the neighborhood security. If they're obscured, the system's vulnerable, especially tonight. Leo's voice climbed before he choked it down. "We need to clean them." Maya nodded her inner lip. "Tonight? Risky move." What if we're spotted? That's why stealth is key, Leo countered, his eyes bright with a mix of worry and thrill. Can you help? I can't manage this solo. A grin slowly blossomed on Maya's face. Operation Solar Shine? I'm in. The hasty strategy session concluded. Leo tasked with gathering supplies, Maya with lookout duty for his parents, and, crucially, Agnes. The garage smelled of oil and mown grass as Leo slipped inside. He snatched a bucket, a sponge, and a bottle of general cleaner from the shelf, his pulse hammering against his ribs. His dad kept a ladder leaning against the far wall behind the dormant snowblower. He edged toward it, careful to avoid the teetering stacks of old newspapers and the neglected badminton set. The cool metal of the lightweight aluminum ladder was a balm to his damp palms. Turning, disaster struck. A small avalanche of discarded soda cans erupted across the concrete, the metallic clamor echoing in the enclosed space. Leo froze, suspending his breath. He strained his ears, listening for any indication he'd been found out. Nothing. A slow deflation of his shoulders accompanied his exhale. Scrambling, he gathered the scattered debris, stuffing it back into the recycling bin before fleeing the garage, ladder bumping against his thigh. Near the driveway, Maya waited, her gaze sweeping the street. All clear, she mouthed, jerking her chin towards Agnes's house. The woman remained absorbed in her floral pursuits, utterly unaware of the illicit activity unfolding across the street. They moved furtively along the edge of Leo's lawn, hugging the shrubbery for cover. Long shadows stretched and distorted with the setting sun, amplifying their clandestine air. They reached the side of the house where the panels sat on a low, flat roof. Leo positioned the ladder against the wall, testing its footing. Eyes peeled, he hissed to Maya. Signal if you see Agnes. Each creak of the ladder felt deafening as he ascended. Reaching the top, he took in the full scope of Agnes's vandalism. The once gleaming black panels were now coated in a garish layer of bubblegum pink. The saccharine scent hung heavy in the air. He plunged the sponge into the sudsy water and began scrubbing. The paint proved tenacious, resisting his efforts. Leo gritted his teeth, scrubbing harder, his muscles protesting. Suddenly, a sharp hiss from Maya. Agnes! Incoming! Leo's head snapped up. Agnes Crabtree was indeed headed their way, a watering can swinging from her hand. He scrambled down the ladder, nearly losing his footing. Hide! He urged Maya, grabbing the bucket and sponge. They dove behind a massive rhododendron bush, hearts thrumming in unison. Agnes approached the side of the house, murmuring to herself. She paused near the rose bushes, completely oblivious to the two conspirators concealed only feet away. Leo held his breath, willing himself into invisibility. Agnes watered her roses, her elongated shadow dancing grotesquely in the twilight. An eternity later, she turned and ambled back toward her house, her humming fading into the evening hush. Leo and Maya exchanged a look of profound relief. That was way too close, Maya whispered, brushing leaves from her hair. Too close indeed, Leo concurred. We need a different angle. Caught in the act. The paint was stubborn. Leo scrubbed until his knuckles ached, the specialized cleaner doing little more than smear the lurid fuchsia across the slick surface of the solar panel. This is going to take forever, he groaned, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a pinkish smudge. Maya, kneeling beside him, attacked another section with a toothbrush. We have to be thorough. Can you imagine if we missed a spot and the system glitched again? The image of Mrs. Higgins' prize-winning poodle locked inside its automated doggy door flashed in her mind. He sighed, resuming his efforts. The air hung thick and heavy with the cloying sweetness of Agnes Crabtree's prized roses, planted meticulously along the property line. The scent usually soothed him, but now it felt suffocating, like a constant reminder of the woman whose actions had plunged their neighborhood into chaos. As the sun beat down, Leo's eyes caught on something unusual. A faint outline, almost invisible beneath the layers of paint, suggested a seam in the panel's surface. He ran his fingers along it, feeling a subtle indentation. Maya, check this out. She abandoned her toothbrush and peered at the spot. What is it? I think there's something underneath. With renewed determination, Leo carefully worked at the edge of the outline, using the edge of his multi-tool. After a few tense moments, a small, rectangular section popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, a tangle of wires connected to a small, blinking circuit board. What is all this? Maya breathed, her eyes wide. Leo reached in, gently tracing the wires with his finger. This isn't just for the solar panel. This is the security grid. He pointed to a thicker cable that ran directly into the ground. It must connect to the central system. Painting over this wasn't just an eyesore, it directly interfered with the power supply. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the floral-scented air. "What do you think you're doing?" Agnes Crabtree stood a few feet away, her face a mask of fury. She clutched a pair of pruning shears, the afternoon sun glinting off the sharp blades. Her rose-patterned gardening gloves were stained with earth and the faint pink of crushed petals. Leo and Maya froze, caught in the act. The open compartment, the exposed wires, the half-cleaned solar panel, it was all damning evidence. "We were just—" Leo stammered, scrambling to his feet. "Don't you dare touch my property." Agnes advanced, her voice rising in pitch. "I saw you sneaking around. I knew you were up to no good." Maya stood her ground, her voice surprisingly firm. "Mrs. Crabtree, we're trying to fix the damage you caused. The paint is affecting the entire neighborhood's security system." Agnes scoffed. "Nonsense. It's my property and I can paint it any color I want. You have no right to interfere." She took another step forward, brandishing the pruning shears. "Now get off my land before I call the police." Leo, realizing the situation was rapidly escalating, stepped in front of Maya, shielding her from Agnes's glare. "We weren't trying to cause trouble," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We just wanted to help." He gestured towards the exposed wires. "But this is more serious than we thought. You're jeopardizing the entire community." Agnes remained unmoved, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "I don't believe a word you're saying. You're just trying to make me look bad." She pointed the shears directly at Leo. "Leave. Now." The sweet perfume of roses felt less soothing now, more like a prelude to a thorny attack. "Burglar alarm." Almost there, Leo muttered, a sheen of sweat slicking his brow. He'd severed the Crabtree residence's power line from the main security web. "A quick jolt now." "What do you think you're up to, Maxwell?" Agnes Crabtree's voice, like a shard of ice, cut through the garage's low thrum. Leo jumped, nearly fumbling the makeshift cable. Maya, tucked behind a pyramid of time-worn paint cans, sucked in a breath. He hadn't sensed her coming. He forced a disarming grin. "Just admiring your garden, Mrs. Crabtree. Those petunias are remarkably vibrant." Agnes remained unconvinced. Her gaze, narrowed and sharp, flickered from Leo to the exposed wires, then to Maya. "Spare me the theatrics. I observed you skulking around." Leo needed to deflect her suspicion instantly. He gambled. "Actually, I spotted a potential safety issue. With all these bare wires, especially coupled with that antiquated fuse box." He subtly indicated the aged, rattling unit on the wall. A wave of pallor washed over Agnes's face. "A safety issue? What safety issue?" "There is no safety issue. I had Mr. Henderson inspect that just last year." "Well," Leo offered, feigning concern, "I'm no electrician, but that buzzing drone isn't exactly comforting." He reached out, pretending to examine the fuse box closely. "And is that a wisp of smoke?" Agnes yelped, slapping his hand away. "Don't touch that. I'll summon Mr. Henderson myself. You two, stay put." She scurried off, grumbling about unreliable tradesmen and the perils of teenage interference. "Now, go, go, go," Leo hissed once she was out of range. He rammed the cable into the power conduit, channeling a concentrated pulse of electricity. A low throb vibrated through the garage, followed by a brittle snap. Every bulb in the Crabtree house pulsed erratically. "Did it work?" Maya asked, clambering from her hiding spot. "I hope so," Leo replied, wrenching the cable free. "Let's get back to the panels." They labored with newfound intensity, scraping the final stubborn flecks of ochre from the last solar arrays. Particles of dust and flakes of paint danced in the air, settling on their faces and clothes. The musty scent of aging paint hung thick, mingling with the metallic tang of exposed circuitry. Suddenly, a deafening alarm shrieked from the control panel within the garage. Crimson lights strobed. "What now?" Maya exclaimed, recoiling. Leo dashed to the monitor. The screen displayed a blurred, monochrome image from one of the neighborhood surveillance cameras. A figure, shrouded in darkness, was attempting to force open the back entrance of the Hendersons' house just a couple of doors down. "Someone's breaking into the Hendersons," Leo blurted, adrenaline spiking his voice. The partially operational system was doing its job. He desperately tried to silence the alarm, but the setup was still too incomplete. The piercing wail would surely alert the intruder. He seized his phone, punching in 911. "This is Leo Maxwell," he stated, his voice unsteady but firm. "I'm at the Crabtree residence. We have an active break-in at the Hendersons, 2 houses down. The security system caught them on camera." He rattled off the address. "Please hurry." Maya watched, her eyes wide, a blend of apprehension and exhilaration in their depths. They had succeeded. They had caught an actual burglar. As Leo ended the call, the image on the security display shifted. The figure, startled by the clamor, was fleeing the Hendersons' backyard, vanishing into the gloom. Moments later, Agnes Crabtree burst back into the garage, her face a thundercloud. What on earth is happening? That blasted racket. Did you two cause this? A change of heart. The police sirens wailed closer, slicing through the quiet suburban night. Leo, still pinned beneath the surprisingly strong burglar, craned his neck to see flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the Crabtree's manicured lawn. Relief washed over him, momentarily eclipsing the ache in his shoulder. Two officers, a man and a woman, emerged from the patrol car, guns drawn but quickly holstered as they assessed the scene. Police. Freeze, the male officer barked, his voice amplified by the stillness. He quickly cuffed the burglar, who offered surprisingly little resistance, just a mumbled string of curses. As they hauled the man to his feet, Leo noticed Agnes Crabtree standing on her porch, a silhouette framed by the porch light. Her face was unreadable, a stark contrast to the fury he'd seen earlier. She clutched her dressing gown tightly around her, her usually immaculate hair disheveled. "Sir, are you all right?" the female officer asked, helping Leo up. "You apprehended this individual?" Leo nodded, brushing off his jeans. "Yeah, caught him trying to jimmy the security system box. Guess he didn't know it was electrified." The officer chuckled dryly. "Lucky for us, maybe not so lucky for him. We've been tracking this guy, breaking and entering a few houses on the other side of the neighborhood." Agnes Crabtree descended her porch steps, her face now illuminated by the flashing lights. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze fixed on the burglar being led to the police car. He was a skinny, gaunt man with hollow eyes, his face a mask of defeat. I didn't realize," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to Leo, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and disbelief. I thought you were the one vandalizing the system." Leo stared at her, surprised by her sudden change in demeanor. "I was trying to fix it, or at least disable it before it fried someone." Agnes took a shaky step closer. "Mr. Maxwell, I owe you a tremendous apology. My behavior was unacceptable. I jumped to conclusions and I was terribly rude." Her gaze flickered to the solar panels on his roof, then back to him. "I didn't understand about the security system, about everything." Just then, Sarah and Emily emerged from their house, drawn by the commotion. Sarah rushed to Leo's side, checking him for injuries. Emily, wide-eyed, clung to her mother's leg. Agnes Crabtree's face softened as she looked at the Maxwell family. "Mrs. Maxwell," she said, her voice now laced with genuine remorse. "I am so sorry for the trouble I caused. I was wrong, and I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me." The following week's HOA meeting was unusually well attended. The air crackled with a different kind of energy, a palpable sense of change. Agnes Crabtree, surprisingly, took the floor. She spoke with humility and conviction, detailing the events of the break-in and her misjudgment of the Maxwells. "I was blinded by my own inflexibility," she admitted, her voice echoing in the community hall. "I prioritized appearances over the well-being of our community. And for that I am deeply sorry." She then proposed a complete review of the HOA's regulations regarding eco-friendly initiatives. "We need to embrace progress, not stifle it," she declared, earning a smattering of applause. The motion passed unanimously. The HOA board, spurred by Agnes's change of heart, agreed to not only allow solar panels but also to actively encourage their installation, offering incentives and streamlining the approval process. Leo watched, a small smile playing on his lips, as the neighborhood that had once seemed so resistant to change began to embrace a brighter, greener future. The security system, powered by his panels, was not only working perfectly, but was also being hailed as a model for other communities. The Crabtrees even invested in their own set of panels, finally understanding the benefits of renewable energy. The neighborhood, slowly but surely, was being powered by the sun, and perhaps a little bit by a change of heart.